Hello. Welcome. Welcome. Welcome to the stream. Yeah. Excuse me. So, uh, I'm gonna play for a bit. Not sure what, but I will start with magic. I will also start with watching something. What was I watching? Oh yeah.
Oh my god, dude.
Oh, this is epic. Oh, crack that shit. Oh, this is awesome. This is awesome. Oh my god, the evil la la. The evil war chant.
Every Smurf must stand up. For it is good and cute and blue.
What? The narrator took an hour and 10-minute nap and came back. Brody, I forgot there was a fucking narrator in this movie.
Like your father watching this movie, he took a nap, okay?
I just dislike, because the Smurfs are neither good nor are they cute.
Smurfette is cute. She's
Hot.
hot and cute are synonyms.
No, they are not.
I'm scared if that's true for you.
I'm going for a strike.
They were legitimately gonna kill him. He dropped a bowling ball on Gargamel's head. That is an act of violent murder.
Why is this movie so immensely cruel to this cat? They just cut off part. That's so fucked up.
I think that's part of the character's character design, so it's like an iconic moment. It's like you see that and you're like,
Oh.
now it's just like Smurfs. It's like, now I know how Han Solo got his name.
This ends here. This ends now.
That's what saves the day? Is Scottish Smurf with a drone?
This slow motion is going on for too long, bro. This is such a long slow motion. I'm gonna fucking vomit.
They're like, we're almost at 90 minutes. Almost at 90 minutes. Okay, it is a little bit funny that the bus driver is just still driving.
Look, someone in chat says truck coon. That's funny. Truck coon.
That was the one joke I liked in the movie, and you've ruined it for me. Are you happy, Luke? Are you happy?
I owe you an apology, Clumsy.
Wait, what did Clumsy do that was helpful?
He grabbed the fucking wand at the end.
Scottish Smurf was the one who carried. He came down in the drone and took the wand out of Gargamel's hand. He did all the work.
Yeah, but then Clumsy Smurf took it and fucking shot him.
My argument is that Clumsy was superfluous to the movie.
I think you're a
He
you're
was a
superfluous in your fucking
non-essential
life.
worker.
Get the hell out of here. He's trying to fuck your wife, Neil Patrick Harris.
It's not cheating if it's a Smurf.
Dude, the baby gets born. Guess what? It's fucking blue.
Come here.
Dude, did you guys play the Smurf Village game on fucking iPod Touch, bro? That game was crazy. Dude, if you guys play Smurf Village, you guys are my real one.
I smurf you.
I Smurf you.
Wow.
That's the last line of the movie. Oh, man.
That was genuinely an impressively terrible movie.
If you guys want us to watch more Smurfs, comment down below and click on the screen to watch more content.
Thanks to Aramir.
Uh-oh.
Alzheimer's is a bad disease. Cure. Andrew Hobson, Aaron Eatson, Leon Bennett, One, Tom Luke, Cosmic Dega, Dante Estefan, Yahoo Chiquita, Emma Major, Foxy Roxy, Frozen Spaghetti, George White, Helio, Imagination Horizons, Isaiah Alpha, Kai Hallow, Kiyoshi, I Like Moon, Rory Flynn Waits, Mark Arcee, Nathaniel Martin, Mega Mini Pug 1, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Nathaniel, Native 5, Novice, Hammer, Nub Nub, 100,000, Omega Waffles, by the way, Penny Pen Pen, Pigeon Wig, Pop Belly, Saul Goodman, Sino Stone, Sir Kaiju, Spilling a Pill, Keep and Stills, Hell Taps, The Milk Got Spilled Up, The Milk Got Cleaned Up, Victoria G, Whimsy, Whatevers, and Wolf's Rain.
Another small cut from the US version comes from Zen's assistant, Michi Hanamura, who is taking a quick picture at the airport. While at the airport, it is worth noting that some dialogue in the Japanese version is spoken in English, not just here but throughout the entire picture. Despite that, the American version still dubs over all the dialogue, regardless on whether it's spoken in Japanese or English.
Drop your pistol, you haven't got a chance. Drop that pistol, you haven't got a chance.
When the expedition arrives on Infant Island, a POV shot from Zen walking through the forest is cut. A scene with Professor Chujo exploring around a cave is removed, as is another bit shortly after he enters the cave. When the expedition finally encounter the small beauties, the tiny twins are speaking to the group in their native language, which sounds like eerie music. The first half of this scene is cut down in the US version, with the dub adding gibberish to the fairy's speech.
Can you give us some idea what they're saying?
When
Read
the
it.
expedition make it back to Japan, a shot of the newspaper company's editor is skipped over in the US version. Also, there's a radio speaker's voice
Nothing I can do.
announcing the return of the crew that's only heard in the Japanese version. A superimposed newspaper's headline announcing Dr. Rock's return
Unless I get a fucking...
is removed from the US version. When Carl Nelson travels back to Infant Island, a few seconds of him walking around a grassy terrain at night are trimmed down in the US cut. When the main cast is allowed to visit the girls who are captured by Nelson, Chujo explains how he was the one they saved from the vampire plants. After telling them that, a shot of them talking once again in their language is removed from the US version. Shortly after, we see the natives of Infant Island, where they are performing for Mothra to hatch. The scene is shortened down in the US version, with various shots being trimmed or cut out. A few moments in the Nito office are trimmed down in the American cut. When the girls are about to perform their second song, the US version cuts it short and focuses on Mothra ramming a ship. Speaking of this, the destruction scene is also slightly trimmed down in the US version, along with the newspaper shot telling of the events being removed completely from the US version. A jet pilot spotting Mothra has his scene shortened significantly in the US version, along with a few shots of Mothra itself. A small bit of the editor talking is removed from the US cut. After the scene where the characters are persuading Nelson to cover the fairy's telepathy, the moment transitions to a dam, with the Japanese version focusing on two workers chatting it up, while the English version just jumps right into the action. In a scene where Nelson's yelling at the girls to stop singing, the moment is cut short in the American version, with the girls continuing to sing and Nelson packing them up. A few newspaper headlines after Mothra's attack on the dam are cut from the US version. During Mothra's arrival on land, a shot of citizens evacuating, jets flying over the air, tanks setting up, and even a shot of Mothra herself are all removed from the US version. An entire moment of the city being evacuated is cut from the American version. This was done to keep the fight between the military and Mothra consistently going in the American version. However, doing so makes the battle randomly go into night midway through. After this moment, we see some more evacuation footage, which is kept in both versions. However, the US one soon trims a lot of it out, along with more scenes of tanks setting up, and even another shot of Mothra being removed. There's a scene where a tank is setting up, and Mothra crawls by and rams into a building, causing the debris to fall on the tank. Other than the tank being crushed, the entire moment is deleted in the US cut. More shots of military vehicles and fire trucks are removed from the US cut. After a brief moment with Nelson trying to escape, the following scenes are cut from the US version. A control room scene, a shot of the military setting up, a shot of the city, and a clip of a helicopter flying near Tokyo Tower. A moment with the characters getting ready to track Nelson, as well as a scene of Nelson himself, are removed from the US version. When we make it to next morning, the following scenes in a row are removed from the US version. Two shots of the heat cannon being transported, a shot of radio broadcasters, a shot of spectators, and a long and mid shot of the cocoon. Once Mothra gets to Orlisiga and attacks it, there's quite a few shots that are removed from the American version. One is of a scene of people waiting for the main cast. It's never made clear at this point that that's who they're waiting for. And ironically, the whole scene itself is in English.
If we don't return the ferries quickly, Newkirk City will be destroyed.
After that, we cut back to Mothra destroying Newkirk City, with some footage removed from the US version. A scene with priests praying to God is removed from the American cut. A moment with the characters walking through a crowd of people is cut. A shot with church bells ringing is shortened down in the US version. A small bit with Michi and Zen praying is cut from the US version. Right before the film ends, there's a small bit of narration heard only in the Japanese version. And finally, the end title cards are different in both cuts. So that was the differences between the American and Japanese versions of Mothra. The US version cuts down quite a bit of footage, even some with Mothra himself, which would definitely upset some people. But the scenes removed don't really hurt the story in any significant way, and do indeed make the pacing run smoother. The dialogue also wasn't really one for one in some parts, but overall those scenes got the same points across. The dub was also done by New York-based Titrasound Studios, and Mothra was one of the first films to give them on-screen credit. The voice actors give these stereotypical Asian accents to all the characters, which I personally never cared for, but I do know people out there love them. But other than that, and a few unintentional English phrasing, the dub is okay. It's just okay. Overall, while the American cut is paced better, the Japanese version definitely feels more lively and gives more expansion to the world. Sure, most of the cut footage doesn't mean much to the overall plot, but their inclusion does help bring some life to this universe. So in the end, I'd say watch the Japanese version. But if you're one of those people who don't like reading their way through a movie, then the American cut isn't that bad. Anyway, thank you all for watching towards the end, and I'll see you next time.
Fuck ass, dude. Ugh. Shitty deck. I was watching this yesterday.
For a long time, this was the accepted only two accounts, that of Dr. Snodgrass and that of John Moran. Snodgrass was a hard advocate who believed alcohol was to blame for any number of societal issues. From the moment he found Poe, Snodgrass was determined to utilize the author's condition for the temperance movement. Furthermore, he recounted these days many times throughout his life, often with glaring inconsistencies, and always concluding that temperance was the way forward. Dr. Moran provides us with similar problems. After Poe's death, his career would shift from physician to lecturer, touring and speaking for substantial profit about Poe's final days. The pattern of these lectures, as he retold them, was heightened drama, likely embellishments, and again, wild inconsistencies. He regularly lied about the circumstances surrounding Poe's death and funeral. Certainly the hospitalization would be likewise fodder. Virtually everything from Moran's accounts must be met with scrutiny. Of course, the most prevailing mystery surrounding Poe's death is cause. Even if the cooping theory sounds good, that doesn't really explain what killed him. Medical records, autopsies, and testing have been equally inconclusive. But this is not for lack of suspects. In examining the death of Edgar Allan Poe, we are met with a litany of potential causes. Poe displayed a number of irregularities in the months leading to his death. Hallucinations, tremors, fever, and stupor, to name a few. Depending on whose account one wishes to believe, Poe may have displayed these for years prior to his death. These are also symptoms of dozens, maybe hundreds of potentially life-threatening conditions. So, what killed Edgar Allan Poe? Poe was highly sensitive to alcohol. According to his peers, a single drink would send Edgar Poe into a raucous drunkenness. The author likely went through long bouts of both alcoholism and total sobriety during his life. So it is tempting to say that, in one fashion or another, Edgar Allan Poe just drank himself to death. Delirium tremens is again a condition brought on by sudden alcohol withdrawals. When Poe left Richmond, he was not drinking at all, as far as history can tell. He did not seem particularly inclined to drink either. If Poe had suddenly started drinking the moment he left Richmond and then stopped just as suddenly in Baltimore, perhaps he could have been suffering from DT by the time he was found on the street. But there are a few small problems and one major problem with this idea. For one, it lacks motive. Why would he have suddenly gone into life-threatening alcoholism only to then immediately stop? Perhaps this is answerable by Poe's on and off near manic relationship with alcohol. But the timeline does not make sense when we consider that DT takes a few days to set in. There just wasn't really enough time for Poe to go through this entire arc. This also does not explain his strange clothing or how he came to be laid down on a makeshift table. And again, Moran seemed insistent that alcohol was not a contributing factor. Snodgrass did think he was drunk when they found him or that alcohol had somehow contributed, but Snodgrass's testimony is questionable at best. Furthermore, no one saw Poe drinking in the days that led up to the incident. Edgar Allan Poe was a riotous, conspicuous drinker. It seems unlikely that he would have disappeared from the public eye to drink himself to death, then abstain, remain anonymous long enough for DT to set in, and then re-emerge on the makeshift table where he was found. But above all of this, there is one major flaw in the alcohol theory. When people drink alcohol, tests reveal elevated levels of lead in the blood. Researchers exhumed Poe's body and tested him for lead. They found that in the weeks preceding his death, Poe's lead levels had dropped about 33%. Poe was certainly not drinking when he died. We should also consider some format of suicide. Poe often hinted at suicide in his writings, and there is even a somewhat dubious account of an 1848 suicide attempt. But in 2020, researchers analyzed Poe's lifelong collection of personal letters and autobiographical writings. They found that he was probably not suffering from depression and certainly not suicidal. To be precise, they concluded that, quote, significant consistent patterns of depression were not found and do not support suicide as a cause of death. If we ignored this for some reason, we could then also ask what sort of suicide would even result in Poe's situation. Perhaps some kind of poorly executed self-poisoning. But there is nothing in contemporary or period medical records that indicate fatal levels of any poison in Poe's body. We could too ignore this and say he ingested some poison in a suicide attempt and things did not transpire exactly how he planned. Maybe he just didn't take enough. But even with this hypothetical possibility, we are forced to reject actual evidence and testimony. We are further required to spin tales about his final days, which are based on little besides conjecture. The most popular and most likely causes of Poe's death have always been various diseases. Rabies is a fatal disease in humans, and it causes many of the symptoms displayed by Poe in the hospital. Such an infection has been proposed as Poe's cause of death. But Poe's body had no animal bites. Furthermore, rabid humans are unable to drink water. During Poe's time in the hospital, he drank both water and soup broth. So, Poe did not have rabies. Indoor lighting at the time produced significant levels of carbon monoxide. This type of monoxide poisoning would have produced symptoms like delirium and stupor before killing a victim. There is also a photograph of Poe from 1849 which shows the author having hallmark symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning, a drooping eye and mouth. But forensic tests on Poe's body displayed only non-toxic amounts of carbon monoxide. In the decade following his death, Poe's body was exhumed and reburied a number of times. In one instance, a gravedigger named George Spence claimed to hear something hard rattling around in Poe's skull. After death, the brain quickly degrades into a liquid, but a brain tumor, once someone has died, can calcify into a hard mass. That could have been what Spence heard rattling around in Poe's skull. It has also been suggested that a brain lesion was the cause for Poe's high sensitivity towards alcohol. All of this theoretically could add up to Poe having a brain tumor which affected his mind before eventually killing him. But George Spence, the gravedigger, was not a doctor. he was not qualified to diagnose a post-mortem brain tumor. Poe's coffin was also extremely degraded. It's more likely that a piece of wood or a rock fell into Poe's partially decomposed skull. The brain tumor theory is possible, but it cannot be proven nor disproven in any significant way, and it has been largely rejected by leading Poe historians. Most of the theories go this way. They can be filed distinctly under the category of maybe. However, there is one disease, one affliction, which seems to tick a lot of the necessary boxes. Tuberculosis is an airborne infection which spreads when someone coughs, sneezes, spits, or even talks. In the 19th century, it was very poorly understood and often fatal. Today, Poe scholars and even interested TB researchers mostly agree that Edgar Allan Poe did have tuberculosis. Poe's life is one rich with mystery, but this diagnosis is perhaps the closest to fact that we have. Poe's mother, father, foster mother, brother, and wife all died of tuberculosis. In fact, in the 19th century, 1 out of 7 people died from TB. Given Poe's family history and the time in which he lived, it is almost certain that Poe had tuberculosis. Further, it is most likely that he was infected in infancy by either his mother or father. And indeed, it is TB which stands out as the most likely culprit for the death of Edgar Allan Poe. The symptoms displayed by Poe during his final days match perfectly with a tuberculosis diagnosis. Specifically, a type of TB called TB meningitis. This is a chronic disease which can take weeks or months to reach its pinnacle. During this sort of incubation stage, it can cause an increasing series of confusion, fever, paranoia, disorientation, delusion, and outright insanity. Our modern image of consumption is usually this. Someone contracts TB, starts coughing blood, and then they die days or weeks later. This is not always the case. Dr. Stephen J. Tyson of the Drexel University College of Medicine notes that, quote, "It's entirely possible to have tuberculosis for much of your life and not know it. Essentially, you're infected and your lungs become inflamed. But then the body heals itself and creates things called granulomas in the lungs around the infection. The TB is held at bay, but there are still living pieces of the infection inside of these granulomas. During this time, a person may not show any symptoms. The infection just kind of lays dormant. But eventually, due to bad health or high stress, the granulomas can break down and the TB becomes reactivated. This is called latent tuberculosis. Despite his contemporary public image, Edgar Allan Poe was physically very healthy for much of his life. In his youth, he was a gifted athlete who had great skill in boxing, long jumping, and swimming. In adulthood, he was a good soldier and could march and perform very well. As a writer, he habitually took mile-long walks in the forests of New England. Poe was not the pinnacle of health, but he was a healthy enough individual. Certainly healthy enough to keep his immune system strong, preventing his latent TB from reappearing for much of his life. In the years and months leading to Poe's death, he was very productive. We may be tempted to say that a man dying of TB would not have this capacity, but this is incorrect. There exists a long record of TB patients who were professionally, intellectually, and creatively brilliant, leading right up until their death. These people were optimistic, light, and productive before being suddenly undone by tuberculosis. Today, many researchers believe that Poe's arrival in Baltimore occurred just at the height of his TB onset. Whatever happened during the missing week on his travels pushed Poe's condition over its edge and resulted in his death. As Poe reached his middle ages, something significant would have needed to occur in order for his TB to reawaken. Here we have a great number of suspects. Perhaps Poe's sensitivity to alcohol was simply an allergy. The man was basically allergic to booze. We don't really know how much Poe drank throughout his life, but we can say that it was probably enough at its heights to weaken his immune system and break down those granulomas. If he began drinking again after leaving Richmond, that could have been all it took to bring his TB back to life. There's also the simple matter of stress. As a sensitive and lifelong creative, Poe led a stressful life. He saw many people die, and he suffered a number of professional and personal tragedies. Years of compounding stress very well could have reignited his tuberculosis. Like we discussed earlier, there was not enough carbon monoxide in Poe's body to trigger poisoning, but there was some. This type of toxin could have weakened his immune system significantly. Poe also did not have cholera, but he was treated for cholera with mercury, which is poisonous to humans. Ironically,
Jesus.
this treatment could have ignited his latent tuberculosis and led to his death. If we reconsider the cooping theory that seemed to line up so well, we have an even more plausible narrative. Cooping would not have killed him, but in conjunction with something else, maybe. TB could have easily been that something. The trauma, physical and mental, of a rough cooping would have been plenty to bring on his latent tuberculosis. We should also keep in mind that it didn't need to be any one of these factors. It could have been a few of them combined. A little stress, a bit of poisoning, and then a night of cooping could have all combined to trigger his TB. Tuberculosis meningitis would have left a series of granular indents on Poe's skull. If Poe's body were exhumed once again for tests, researchers could likely find these indents and confirm the diagnosis. But at this point, there are no plans for such a process, and there unlikely will be. During his life, Edgar Allan Poe had a very casual relationship with the truth. He embellished tales of his days, often lied about his childhood, in an effort to make his time on Earth all the more dramatic and romantic. Poe's death will forever remain a mystery. Perhaps he would want it no other way. With all of that said, the story of Poe's death and the meaning of Poe's death does not end with his final day on Earth.
My cue to
Poe's
leave.
funeral could be summed up in perhaps one word: procedural. One carriage took him to a small, nearly anonymous cemetery. Poe had no tombstone. He was buried with a meager audience of about 9, 3 of whom were grave diggers. The entire affair lasted about 3 minutes, with one attendee describing it as, quote, cold-blooded and unchristian-like. Dr. Snodgrass was in attendance, and he wrote this for the funeral. The plainly coffined body was speedily lowered, and then the earth was shoveled directly upon the coffin lid. This was so unusual, even in the burials of the poor, that I cannot help noticing the absence of not only the customary box as an enclosure for the coffin itself, but of even the commonest boards to prevent the direct contact of decomposing wet earth with it. I shall never forget the emotion of disappointment, mingled with disgust, and something akin to resentment that thrilled through my whole being as I heard the clods and stones resound from the coffin and break the more ordinarily solemn stillness of the scene as it impressed me. It seemed as if heartlessness, too often found directing the funeral rites of the poor and forsaken ones of the earth, had suddenly become personified into a malign goddess, and that she had ordered those awfully discordant sounds as best befitting her own unearthly mood. Poe had earned very little money throughout his life, but a few years prior to his death, Poe published The Raven, which gained him widespread reputation and even fame. That being said, this...
I'll be right back. Real quick.
You choose her or not choose wrong. With a skipper heart, she's one cool, calm, her DK. Donkey Kong. He has no style. He has no grace. This Kong has a funny face. He can handstand when he needs to and stretch his arms out just for you. Inflate himself just like a balloon. This crazy Kong just digs his tune. Huh, DK. Donkey Kong. Huh, DK. Donkey Kong. DK. Donkey Kong is here. He's back again and about time too. And this time, he's in the mood. He can fly real high with his jetpack on. With his pistols out. He's one tough Kong. He'll make you smile when he plays his tune. But gremlins beware, cause he's after you. Huh, DK. Donkey.
Alright, I'm back.
His fame was not always the kindest sort. During Poe's life, poetry was expected to be written with a certain timbre. Christian ideals dictated that poetry should be convivial, amusing, and uplifting. The written word was meant to communicate wholesome moral lessons. Poe rejected all of this. Edgar Allan Poe wrote about lonely, isolated people fighting unwinnable battles against forces they rarely even understood. His protagonists were under constant threat and almost never came out unscathed. And so his works were largely rejected by his contemporary sensibilities. This can be seen clearly in the New York Tribune's obituary for Edgar Allan Poe, written by a man named Rufus Wilmot Griswold. Griswold touched on Poe's talent for writing. How could he not? But it was not Poe's talent which was in question at the time. Instead, Griswold assaulted his character, calling Poe arrogant and cynical. He described Poe as a madman who walked the streets having hallucinatory conversations with phantasms. He alluded that Poe was a drunk and a drug addict. The obituary read as one for a degenerate, not for a literary titan. Griswold had old-fashioned opinions, in line with those of his oldest contemporaries. He worried that Poe's immoral writings would lead readers down a path of degeneracy. Griswold's wholehearted goal was to cast Poe's work off into death alongside the author himself. But entirely by accident, Griswold did just the opposite. For one thing, his obituary was met with a chorus of refute. Poe's strongest supporters immediately published writings attesting to the author's character, talent, and deserved place in literary canon. The conflicting reports led to an upheaval of interest in Poe's works. Audiences flocked to Poe's writings, and his life itself seemed to uncover for themselves the truth about the author. This did not only happen in immediacy. Generations that followed up to today found unending fascination in everything Poe, spearheaded by Griswold's libelous obituary. So who was Edgar Allan Poe? He was a man in fight. Fight against demons and disease over which he had only the smallest bit of control, and for which society at large had very little interest. Often he won these fights, going years with working progress in sobriety. He had friends who he loved and who loved him. Poe was a remarkably intelligent, perceptive, and sensitive genius of a man. He achieved dreary literary heights which still have not been surpassed. He was, like all people large or small, complicated. I think Poe, above most other things, was simply early. His fascinations were not the fascinations of his time. Isolation, pain, and death were to be shoved under the rug in Poe's era. But as the 19th century shifted to the 20th, these horrors came into the spotlight of reality. The Civil War and 2 world wars wreaked havoc on America and the entire world. The cultural tone shifted in a way that became much closer to the sounds and sights of Edgar Allan Poe. Today, this shift has come more squarely than ever. We are burdened with anxieties and deep spiritual pain. Poe identified these as an inexorable part of the human condition, no matter how much the world wished to proclaim otherwise. Poe wanted to write for the regular person. He wanted his stories to be felt by the populace, not only by the elite. Edgar Allan Poe did not live to see this become reality, but it has indeed. The world has moved, and the winds have changed. So today we have what could only be described as appropriate for the author and his works. In death, Edgar Allan Poe is more alive than ever.
Today we're going to be going over some more of the worst alternate DC universes, since you guys just like this series so much. Now again, let me remind you, when I say worst, I don't necessarily mean the storyline is bad. It's just that, you know, you would not want to live in these universes because they're pretty grim, they're pretty dark, pretty edgy, I would say.
My name is Jeff.
The first alternate universe we're going to talk about is Earth 3. In this alternate world, the heroes and villains are inverted, so everyone who's normally a hero is a villain. So basically what that means is that the entire Justice League is evil and is known as the Crime Syndicate. They're comprised of Ultraman, who is an evil version of Superman, Johnny Quick, who is the evil Flash, Owlman, who is the evil Batman, Superwoman, who is the evil Wonder Woman, Deathstorm, who is the evil Firestorm, Grid, who is the evil Cyborg, Atomica, who is the evil Atom, and Power Ring, who is the evil Green Lantern. Now, I'm not going to go into too many details about their origins because they're relatively the same as their counterparts, except for the fact that they murder everyone because they're evil. And if you're wondering about the evil Aquaman of the Crime Syndicate, well, we don't really know much about him because he died. Yeah, he died during transport. Like a fucking goldfish that you just bought from the pet store. Bro just died before he could even. But I would like to throw out a formal complaint to the writers because they made Superwoman a whole promiscuous person. You know, she's for the streets. She was in a relationship with Ultraman while secretly also being in a relationship with Owlman and also carrying the child of Lex Luthor, who is also evil Shazam. His name is Mazaz, which is Shazam backwards. What a cool name. They were featured in the Forever Evil storyline where they invaded Prime Earth. They were also featured in Justice League Crisis on Two Earths. This movie is cool. You should watch it. The next universes we're going to talk about were featured in the Dark Knight's Metal storyline. Essentially, this storyline is about the bat god named Barbados, who was created to consume unstable worlds. But he grew tired of this and killed his master and set his eyes on the regular multiverse, thus creating the dark multiverse, because all of the unstable worlds were existing longer than they were supposed to. So Barbados recruits all of these evil Batmen from around the dark multiverse, with Prime Earth Batman serving as the gateway for him to come through. Now, I'm not going to go over the rest of the storyline, but I will go over the evil Batmen from the different universes. Kicking it off, we have evil Batman Cyborg, aka Murder Machine. In this reality, Alfred is getting the shit beaten out of him by a bunch of Batman villains as they ask him where Batman is. But Alfred ain't no snitch, so he just ends up getting killed. Batman is very sad about this, but luckily, he has an Alfred protocol, because of course he does, which is an AI created from a scan of Alfred's mind that he had been working on, except it was never finished. So he asked the Cyborg to help him out. They get the Alfred AI working, and of course this thing immediately starts murdering everyone. Because why not? It's doing this because it sees everything as a threat to Bruce. And while it's murdering everyone, all the AI can say is, "How may I help you?" Cyborg is all like, "Bro, we gotta delete this shit." And Batman hits him with the, "No, I can fix him." Then the AI takes over Batman's body and removes his ability to feel fear and sadness. I don't know why specifically those two emotions it decided to remove. Thank God they didn't remove his lust for gooning though. I mean, an Alfred protocol is crazy. Imagine if there was a Harambe protocol. You know, a gorilla who was tragically taken from us too soon. Now that would be cool. Like, imagine talking to Harambe. Harambe, is that you?
Yes, my child. It is I, Harambe.
Oh my god. Harambe, please, I request your guidance.
What is it that you need, my child? I'm here to help.
I must embark on a great journey, but I'm unsure if I have what it takes to complete it.
I understand your hesitation, but do not doubt yourself, my child. You have the strength and resilience within you. Believe in yourself and have faith in your abilities. The journey may be difficult, but with courage and determination, you will overcome any obstacle in your path.
Thank you for your wisdom, great Harambe. I have one more request, if I may.
Of course, my child. What is your request?
My child.
You hit the gritty.
I am not sure I understand what you mean, my child. Can you elaborate on your request?
The gritty is a dance from this popular game called Fortnite. Some wise words from Harambe, and it's all possible thanks to Polybuzz. Polybuzz is an AI chatbot app with millions of characters to choose from, real and fictional. Download the app through my link in the description and use promo code IZON to unlock premium features. That's AIZON. Just simply type it in the search bar and you're good to go. Next up, we have the most popular and recognizable one, evil Batman Joker, aka the Batman who laughs. In this universe, the Joker drugs Batman and goes to town by killing everybody that Batman holds dear and all the villains. and the entire city. Basically, he's just killing everyone. He's going berserk mode. This master plan of his is called the joke too far, and he's doing it to push Batman to his breaking point of finally killing him. And to absolutely no one's surprise, it works. You know, Batman breaks free and snaps his neck like a pencil, which then releases a toxic Joker gas from his body because comic books, you know, he's a very gassy boy. He had a lot of Taco Bell. Why does he just have gas inside of him? I don't understand. Anyways, Batman gets poisoned by this, and while talking to Superman, it's revealed that the chemicals that made the Joker were slowly killing him. Superman also tells him about how this Jokerized little girl tried to bite her doctor's throat out, and Batman laughs. I don't know about you, Superman, but if I saw that Batman was laughing at something like that, I would punch his head clean off, because bro is already gone. Later, Batman gathers the Bat family in the cave to tell them that he's been infected. He will still retain his intellect and his prowess, but his morals will be that of the Joker. And all of them are like, oh, it's okay, we'll find a way to help you out. To which Batman calmly replies by gunning all of them down and killing the Justice League. Oh, and by the way, just in case you didn't think he was evil enough, he also forced Superman to kill his family by giving him black kryptonite, which I don't know why black kryptonite is the one that makes him violent. Why specifically the color black? Why is that one? Why is that one the one that makes him violent?
Yeah.
You got some explaining to do, DC. Next up, we have evil Batman Doomsday, aka Devastator. Stupid ass Transformers name, bro.
Right.
In this universe, Superman just started killing everybody for some reason. So Batman decided Superman needed to be killed, and he whipped out a kryptonite spear. And of course, his arm gets blown off. Because, like, you're just a normal dude. Like, how did you think this was gonna play out? Bro brought a melee weapon to the fight when his opponent can fly and shoot laser beams from his eyes. What did you think was gonna happen? Not because even this dude Superman started trash talking him. But of course, Batman always has a plan for everything, and he injects himself with the Doomsday virus.
I'm gonna
that
die.
he keeps on his utility belt, and he starts beating the shit out of Superman and kills him with his stink-ass breath, which causes spikes to shoot out of his body. Next up is evil Batman Aquaman, aka the Drowned. Except, as you may have noticed, they're a woman. So yeah, in this universe, the genders are reversed, and Bruce Wayne is known as Bryce Wayne, and their lover, Sylvester Kyle, it gets killed by
What the
metahumans.
fuck?
So, this version of Batwoman, this Batwoman decides to kill all of the metahumans to get revenge. And after successfully killing most of them, Aquawoman and her Atlanteans show up, and Batwoman goes to war with them. Aquawoman is stabbed to death by her own trident because I guess Aquaman just gets disrespected no matter what universe he's in. Anyways, Batwoman thought that killing their queen would deter them, but instead the Atlanteans flooded Gotham, so Batwoman decided to undergo surgery to become just like the Atlanteans. She also engineers an army to fight with her, just so she can win. What the fuck is this story? Next up, we have evil Batman Wonder Woman, aka the Merciless. In this universe, Batman and Wonder Woman have been at war with Ares for 2 years because Ares forged the helmet that increased his power by a metric fuckton. However, when they finally defeated Ares, it came at the cost of Wonder Woman's life. But before Wonder Woman died, she warned Batman about the helmet and how it would corrupt him. So of course, Batman chose the sensible and smart option and threw that bitch right on his head. Dude really threw on that helmet like it was a new shiny piece of loot that dropped from a raid boss. And then bro goes on to say how he's gonna reshape all of warfare by being merciful and using the helmet's ability for justice. Yeah, right, bro. Yeah, he just starts killing everyone. It was also revealed that Batman was the real person who killed Wonder Woman, not Ares, and he killed her because she tried reaching for the helmet first. Like, dude folded instantly. Bro was just salivating for the helmet. Bro's mental was so weak, he got corrupted just from looking at the helmet. Next up is evil Batman Flash, aka the Red Death. In this universe, Batman is attacking Flash because he wants the Speed Force, so he can travel back in time and save people from his past. Yeah, because time travel always ends up well. So obviously Barry says no, but somehow Batman was able to freeze the Flash's leg with a needle injection. He stabbed his leg. How do you catch him? What do you... And then straps Barry on the Bat Tank, which was modified to siphon the Speed Force from him. And once he gained the powers of the Flash, he started killing all the villains. He punched the Scarecrow in half with his fist. What the fuck? And finally, we have evil Batman Green Lantern, aka Dawnbreaker. This one is possibly one of the most twisted versions of Batman. In this universe, when Batman's parents got killed, instead of crying and being sad like a pussy, he instead got really mad and started chasing down the killer. While he was doing this, he said that he felt nothing inside. And that's when a Green Lantern ring flew to him, claiming that he had the ability to overcome great fear. But like, I thought the whole point of, you know, like Lantern ring powers were emotions. You know, I thought they were fueled by emotions, and bro literally said he felt nothing. And I don't know why the ring decided he would be a good bearer for it just because he could overcome fear. Shouldn't he need to display, you know, great willpower to get a Green Lantern ring? Is the ring stupid? Wouldn't it have made more sense for him to become a Red Lantern because of his anger? Well, I mean, he's clearly mad. Look at bro's face. Anyways, this version of Batman's willpower was so great that he was able to overcome the ring safety protocols and engage in lethal force. Which, again, doesn't make sense. Is that even willpower at that point, or is that just, like, raging bloodlust? Yeah, it looks like Joe Chill's not so chill anymore because he's got fucking vaporized by green energy. Anyway, surprise, surprise, this version
Joe
of
Chill's
Batman
not so
then
chill
decides to
anymore.
go on a killing spree and murder all of the villains. So Jim Gordon comes over and he's like, hey man, maybe you're going a bit too far. To which he calmly replies by saying, looks like your daughter's gonna have to grow up without a father. Sad, and then vaporizes him. That's when the Green Lantern Corps finally arrives, and they demand he hands over the ring. Yeah, he killed all of them. I guess his willpower is just too strong. All that willpower and your parents are still dead. The last alternate universe I want to cover is Superman Red Son. In this universe, Superman's origin is slightly altered. Instead of landing in Smallville, he lands in the Soviet Union. Superman becomes a member of Stalin's inner circle and uses his power for the greater good of the country. Until one day, the CIA enlists Lex Luthor to find a way to kill Superman. So Lex Luthor's plan is to crash Sputnik into Metropolis in order to bait out Superman, so when Superman comes to stop it in time, he'll touch it with his grimy little hands, and Luthor will then be able to obtain the DNA samples from it and clone him. And I guess it worked, because he was able to create a clone. I don't even know how he got enough DNA from this probe to clone Superman. Like, did Superman bust a nut on it? I don't understand. Superman and Wonder Woman meet at a diplomatic party, and the two form a bond. But then Stalin is secretly assassinated by his son, and Superman is convinced to lead the country. Stalin's son also kills this kid's parents for spreading propaganda. This totally won't have any future implications. The clone is completed, but it turned out like shit. But bro said, fuck it, whatever, we ball, and he sent it to fight Superman. And the battle was so epic that they accidentally set off a nuke. The clone thought he was so much better than normal Superman that he decided to sacrifice himself to stop the nuke. So now there's a very obvious conflict between the US and the Soviet Union. Years pass and a utopia within the Soviet Union has been created through the efforts of Superman and Wonder Woman. But it turns out this peace was achieved at the cost of people's freedom, as those who disobeyed were lobotomized. And because they spent all those years together, Wonder Woman had now developed feelings for Superman. Cause I guess alternate universe Wonder Womans just can't keep it in their pants when it comes to Superman dictators. Though Superman's autistic ass is unaware of her true feelings because he just sees her as a comrade. However, Luthor isn't done yet. He came back like Doofenshmirtz and enacts another plan to eliminate Superman. He allies himself with Brainiac to shrink Moscow, but Brainiac instead shrinks Stalingrad instead. Oopsies! Superman captures Brainiac and reclaims the city. The tiny city is confined in a bottle, and it serves as Superman's greatest failure, as it's revealed that the city can't be reverted to its normal size. And to help serve the country better, Superman reprograms Brainiac. Hey, you remember that kid who got orphaned earlier? Well, that kid becomes Batman, and he's now fighting against the system. He is assisted by Lex Luthor, who supplies him with materials and a plan to fight Superman. The plan involved kidnapping Wonder Woman to draw out Superman so they could use solar energy machines to suck up his power. And of course, when Wonder Woman is kidnapped, she's tied up with her own lasso. Because why not? Because why not? Why hide? Why hide our fetishes when we're writing comic books? Why not just let it all out at this point? The plan works and Superman is weakened. However, he's able to convince Wonder Woman to break free and destroy the machines, which greatly injures her. Batman realizes that he's shit out of luck and that the plan failed, so he offs himself because he's scared of getting his brain scrambled. Wonder Woman leaves Superman's side, and now she hates him because he didn't give a shit about her injuries. Later, Brainiac tells Superman that he should invade the US, but Superman rejects the idea. Lex Luthor then becomes the president of the US and discovers the existence of Green Lanterns and makes an army out of them. He also teams up with Wonder Woman and her Amazons, gathering forces to fight Superman. Luthor then confronts Superman at his home and is captured by Brainiac. Brainiac tells Superman that Luthor was going to convince him to end himself, which forces Superman's hand. Superman begins his attack on the US with the help of Brainiac. He runs through the opposing forces with ease, though as he begins closing in on the White House, Louis Luthor, that's right, in this universe, Lois Lane is married to Lex Luthor, hands him a small letter that was handwritten by Lex. It read, "Why don't you just put the whole world in a bottle, Superman?" Superman realizes that he's gone too far in his quest for control, and he orders Brainiac to stop the invasion, to which Brainiac replies with,
Fuck no, baby!
It's revealed that Brainiac was under no one's control this whole time, and that he wanted world domination for his own all along. Luckily, Luthor is able to shut down Brainiac from within. Brainiac's ship begins to explode, and Superman flies it into space, seemingly dying in the explosion. But actually, he didn't die. He's just living among the humans now. Then Luthor created a utopia world, mixed with the ideologies of Brainiac, Superman, and himself. And then everyone lived happily ever after. So yeah, those universes are kind of sucky and bad. But then it's revealed that this version of Superman was actually a descendant of Lex Luthor from the far future that was sent back in the past, thus making Superman and Lex Luthor related the entire time?
It's a beaver?
Enough with the mysteries. I've come. Haven't you ever heard of personal space? don't overthink things.
Hey. GG's. I got silver. Yeah. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get a snacky snack real quick. I'll be RB.
White Ranger, activate Saba the talking saber and follow his instructions.
Tiger Sword Tower, now!
Now you're ready to fight. And sound the call to battle. And now, really grab the power. The Power Cannon. Its 5 Powerball ammunition load is harmless to humans, but not to evil space aliens. Add even more power with the Power Gun Sword. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers from Bandai. Grab the power.
And Mr. Freeze aims to chill Batman next, but not anti-freeze Batman. Mr. Freeze and his Ice Zapper are out of control, but Batman's ready.
Freeze, Batman! Take this, hot shot! Ah!
Only Batman's Ice Hammer vehicle is tough enough to drill through this ice storm.
Chill out, Mr. Freeze!
Now the best is hotter than ever. Batman! Vehicle and figures each sold separately.
The hearts of men, the Shadow knows. The evil Khan calls on his fiendish friend Dr. Makino. But Ninja Shadow with blazing eyes has the power to stop them. Makino and Khan take off. Ninja Shadow chases them in his Mirage, each sold separately. Will they get away? Who knows? The Shadow knows. Now you can get a free Shadow Agent's ring.
It changes!
Just like in the movie. Send in 2 proofs of purchase from any Shadow toys for your free Shadow hologram ring.
Wow!
The Shadow knows.
Now you can be as clever as Kevin with Tiger's new TalkBoy tape recorder.
Stop drooling on me! Stop drooling on me!
It even has speed control.
Hi, kids. We're home early.
Hi, kids. We're home early.
Tiger's new TalkBoy tape recorder comes with audio cassette. Now have more Home Alone fun with Tiger's new Home Alone 2 handheld game.
Savage Hunter, Aliens vs. Predator, with awesome new Predators. Clan Leader attacks with whipping dreadlocks. And Stalker, glowing in the dark, fires his spear. Suddenly, flipping up his attack spikes, the wild boar alien charges. And the ferocious mother...
Alright, back.
Recently, I came across this video by Chilling Scares, in which he covered the FBI's 10 most wanted list, and it got me thinking, who holds that same notorious status here in Japan? Whenever you go out walking in Kobe, or any other city, you'll inevitably come across these posters, plastered on the side of kobans, or on bulletin boards, detailing the most wanted suspects designated by the National Police Agency. At present, there are 12 of them. And yet, since their stories haven't been covered by Western media outlets, and are essentially region-locked, these men remain virtually unknown beyond the country's borders. Today, I want to go over the 4 most wanted suspects featured on these posters, those with the highest bounties and the darkest stories. Because, as safe as Japan is, even a country with a low crime rate has its share of monsters. Regardless of any potential TikTok bans, the fact is that anyone can visit any data broker's website right now and purchase their users' personal information for just a few dollars, completely legally. Unfortunately, our info is out there, and it's the fault of a feature my old. One day, Kogure was invited by a co-worker to go bowling, and Ishi happened to be there. Kogure was strangely talkative that night, unlike his usual self. When Ishi mentioned that she liked driving, Kogure eagerly responded, "Wow, what a coincidence. I love cars too." Despite his alleged love for cars, Kogure only drove a regular, unmodified vehicle. But soon after that interaction, he proudly announced that he had purchased a brand new sports car, a Nissan Silvia. Ishi found his behavior unsettling, as Kogure insisted that he had bought the car just for her. Eventually, he mustered up the courage to ask her on a date, and although she was hesitant due to their work connection, Ishi agreed to meet with her, just once. However, for Ishi, the experience was a chilling one. When we went home from dinner, she later explained, he deliberately took me on a long detour and drove in the opposite direction of my home. It was extremely scary. After that evening, Ishi turned down Kogure's repeated invitations for a second date, but the delivery driver had become obsessed with her. Refusing to take no for an answer, he memorized her address and began stalking her home. He would randomly call her at work and at home, and just breathe down the line, and even left notes on her car's windshield while waiting outside her workplace. But in time, it seemed the silent treatment actually worked. Kogure eventually quit his job and stopped showing up at the drugstore altogether. Ishi, of course, felt relieved, believing she was finally rid of her stalker. On January 14th, 1998, Ishi returned to her family home in Takasaki City, formerly Gunma Town. Upon stepping foot inside, she began to make her way upstairs. As she did, Kogure leapt out from behind the door, grabbed Ishi from behind, forced her into a room near the entrance, and held her down on the floor. "I really like you," he confessed, his breath warm and stale, his clothes stained red. And yet, in spite of the stains, Ishi quickly noticed that Kogure had no noticeable injuries on his body. That realization made her heart sink, and her thoughts turned to her parents and grandmother, whom she lived with. She called out to them, but received no response. Kogure restrained Ishi for nearly 3 hours while they exchanged words. Afterwards, Kogure walked out the front door and fled the scene. Ishi then ran up to the second floor of the now silent house, where she noticed the hallway was covered in blood, so much so that there wasn't a clear patch to stand on. She later discovered the bodies of her parents and grandmother hidden in separate closets. Kogure had killed them using a knife or similar bladed weapon. Kogure used his newly purchased white Nissan Silvia with the license plate Gunma 33 MO867 to escape. He was last seen on the Tosui Bridge, heading towards Saitama.
Overthink things.
Gunma Prefectural Police immediately set up an investigation headquarters, issuing a nationwide wanted notice for Kogure and tracking his whereabouts. However, his trail has since gone cold, and his vehicle remains missing. Over the years, numerous investigators have been assigned to the case, and dedicated officers continue to work on solving it today. The walls of the investigation HQ are lined with case files, a testament to the firm resolve to bring this case to a resolution. It's now been 27 years since the incident. Typically, as a case gets colder, tracking fugitives becomes more challenging due to reduced investigative efforts and declining public interest. But though the prospect of finding a suspect after such a long time seems slim, recently, many Japanese criminals have been brought to justice after spending decades on the run. Most famously, Kirishima Satoshi, who, in 2024, was finally identified after 50 years of evading capture. In that case, however, Kirishima voluntarily gave himself up on his death. He wanted to die under his real name. Assumed identity. Still, this resulted in the so-called Kirishima effect, which saw a number of fugitives arrested in quick succession thereafter. Unfortunately, Kogure was not amongst those apprehended.
We all have things we'd rather.
Japan formerly had a statute of limitations for murder, one which was abolished in 2010. As such, Kogure's face will remain on the nation's most wanted posters until he's finally brought to justice or proven to have passed away. A reward of up to 3 million yen, around 20,000 USD, is being offered to anyone with information that leads to his arrest. Kogure Hiroshi is described as being 170 centimeters tall, with a long face, and at the time, a slender build. His habits include smelling his hands and biting his nails. If still alive, he'd be 55 years old today. If captured, he'll be ordered to pay Ishii over 150 million yen in compensation for the mental anguish he endured. Though I think that would be the least of Kogure's worries, because, given the heinous nature of his crime, if found guilty, he'd almost certainly be given the death penalty. Fugitive number 2, Hatta Yoichi. Bounty, 8 million yen. If you ever needed proof that appearances can be deceiving, meet Hatta Yoichi, one of Japan's 4 most wanted men, and the fugitive with the largest bounty to his name. Despite looking far more boyish than the hardened criminals that sit alongside him on these posters, Hatta actually has an extensive criminal background, and just like Kyomin Suk, whom I covered in a recent upload, fits the profile of a dark triad personality type, possessing traits associated with pathological narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. Not only had the 28-year-old Hatta spent his adulthood exploiting the welfare system and scamming strangers on the street, but he had developed a habit of causing disturbances in restaurants and at train stations to relieve his stress. Worse yet, in early 2022, he was handed a suspended prison sentence for the illegal confinement of a woman he met on a dating app. The judge would have been wise not to let him off so easy. For just a few short months later, Hatta chose to do something heinous enough to land himself a place on this poster. On the evening of June 29th, 2022, two 19-year-old university students, known only as A and B, were shopping for second-hand clothes in Beppu City, Oita Prefecture, riding from shop to shop on their motorbikes. After finishing up their last bit of shopping at a department store, the pair hopped onto their bikes, which were parked in the lot outside. As they prepared to set off, they noticed a young man walking along the nearby path, playing music extremely loudly on his phone. A massive cultural faux pas in Japan. That man was Hatta Yoichi. A stared at Hatta, confused and honestly a little angry that this stranger was being so disrespectful to the local residents.
I'm tired of your
Hatta visibly angry. He pointed directly at student A and shouted, "What the hell are you looking at?" Hatta then proceeded to reprimand A for walking his motorbike out of the lot through the wrong exit. Not wanting any trouble, A apologized for staring, bowed his head respectfully, and rode off alongside B. The two students made their way along a prefectural road when they came to a red light approximately 370 meters from the parking lot. They waited for the light to turn green, and as they did, briefly discussed the angry exchange that had occurred just 3 minutes prior. But as they sat at that red light, they heard the roar of an engine approaching from behind them. Little did they realize that Hatta had been following in his white minicar. The last thing the two students noticed were his bright headlights bearing down on him. Hatta smashed his car into A and B at 100 kilometers an hour, sending their bikes flying. A died on impact, while B, who was grievously injured, thankfully survived. After striking his two victims, Hatta lost control of his car and crashed into a utility pole. He didn't report the accident, nor did he provide any medical assistance to A or B. Instead, he left his wallet, smartphone, and shoes inside the car and ran away from the scene barefoot, eventually disappearing at a yacht harbor about 2 kilometers away. His shirt was found on the concrete floor beside the seafront, though Hatta himself has never been seen or heard from since. In September 2023, the National Police Agency designated Hatta as one of Japan's most wanted men, stating that he was being sought for a road traffic violation. A public reward of 3 million yen was offered to anyone who could help bring him to justice. A's family also offered an additional 5 million yen to incentivize those with information to come forward. As a result, hundreds of self-professed Hatta Yoichi hunters started looking there, hoping to claim that bounty for themselves, and at least 9,000 tips from all over the country have been reported to the authorities. There was buzz on social media when security footage came to light, supposedly showing Hatta burglarizing a Nagoya City bar in late October 2024. Analysts noted that the man's facial structure, eye shape, jawline, and finger proportions all match with those of the fugitive. However, this individual was later arrested, and this was confirmed to be a case of mistaken identity. As it stands, the real Hatta Yoichi's whereabouts remains unknown. Since Hatta was last seen heading towards the harbour, and his shirt was found at the water's edge, some suspect that he entered the sea and drowned. But experts disagree. In their minds, Hatta left his shirt behind for a very different reason. You see, although the centre of Beppu City has its fair share of CCTV cameras, the area surrounding the harbour is notorious for being a dark spot. One theory, presented by fellow YouTuber Asianalysis, is that Hatta removed his shirt to make himself less identifiable, and then played the part of a shirtless jogger, making his way along the cameraless harbour. He then ran north along the seafront towards his home, which was conveniently situated on the coastline. Though undoubtedly a long distance to jog, Hatta was in good shape and physically very fit. He obsessively worked on his physique, and once cycled 10 hours straight from Chiba to Atami. With that in mind, he may have also been able to swim some of the distance to further avoid detection.
I think I might find something else. Just kind of... Not that it's not interesting. I don't want to get too tired. I don't know what to watch. Damn. Trying to think.
refusing to align with Joseph Stalin, which
This is not what I want to watch. It's because there's no subtitles. Excuse me.
Godzilla has appeared in a lot of things, from video games to commercials promoting pudding, to manifesting physically on your shelf as a plastic toy or two. I don't even remember buying these. New toys keep appearing on my shelf whenever I'm not looking. Please send help! And the subject of today's video is Godzilla's presence in printed media, comic books. Now, I've read a couple runs from Godzilla's comic book career, mainly IDW's insane output, but I'd still consider comics my blind spot. I'm more intimately familiar with the movies, so I'm more equipped to give you an in-depth rundown of the plot of Godzilla's Revenge than I am to tell you what a Batragon is, for now at least. For this video series, I plan on going through all the Godzilla comics released in the United States, but with that mission statement, I feel the need to say that the title for this series is a little misleading. If you consider Japanese manga comics, then no, I won't be covering those, for a couple reasons. Not only are most Godzilla manga straight up not translated, but some are still being discovered to this day. So if I tried to cover all the Godzilla manga, then it wouldn't exactly be comprehensive, because some Godzilla manga that adapted one of the movies, like, recently gets discovered or something. The point of this exercise is to see how Godzilla has been depicted in Western comics, how they helped shape the pop cultural identity of the character, and how they eventually changed to match the movie depictions. And most importantly of all, I just want to have a good time. Like seriously, if you've never read the Godzilla comics, they get wild. You have no idea what you're in for. Keep in mind, I am not an expert on the medium, but maybe I can learn a little. I'm mainly here to give my impressions of these books as a casual reader. I'll be giving a slight recap of what the comic is, then I'll be reviewing it. This naturally means I'll be spoiling a thing or two, but I'll make sure to leave out a couple surprises just in case you want to read these for yourself. It's a long, long journey, more densely packed when we get closer to modern day because of all the IDW stuff, so I'm here to entertain. One more thing, credit where it's due. Most, if not all, of the scans you're about to see come from Wikizilla, so thank you. I'm trying to keep the intro here short, so let's just start from the beginning. Humbly enough, Godzilla's comic career starts with a very short 4-page promotional comic for the 1976 American release of Godzilla vs. Megalon. If you've seen the film's US trailer, this comic reads like a Cliff Notes adaptation of that, more so than the movie.
Godzilla and his powerful ally, Robot Man.
It introduces all
Robot
the monsters
Man.
and does some weird revisionism to the story. In the comic, Megalon appears, Godzilla has to fight both him and Gigan alone, then Jet Jaguar arrives to save his friend. In the actual movie, Megalon appears, Jet Jaguar is controlled by the bad guys to lead him around, he breaks free of their control, he goes to Monster Island to request Godzilla's aid, he fights Megalon and Gigan alone, then Godzilla arrives and he does an internet meme. Here the roles are switched around, and more pressingly, so are the names. Gigan is called Borodan now, a name change I can't even begin to justify. Jet Jaguar is also given the name Robot Man. The list of minor differences goes on, but at the end of the day, this thing was made exclusively to sell kids on the movie, and it shows. Much of the art is traced directly from the movie, and the anatomy of the characters shifts wildly once the tracing stops. I guess some things never change. I do love the sensational narration written for this book. You know, it was probably written by marketing people, so you get colorful descriptors like the boorish might of Megalon, and my personal favorite, colossal hell-spawned misanthropoid. It's cheesy as hell. There's not much else to say here. The comic is a funny little throwback. You'd be dedicating, at most, 90 seconds of your life to reading it.
Remember, kids, always buy your indie comics and pirate your Marvel comics.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the big one. The main event. The more time-consuming one. From 1977 to 1979, Marvel Comics would produce their own Godzilla series set within the Marvel Universe. The panel from the first issue sums it up. Godzilla has just arrived in North America. With a vengeance. The first issue starts how you'd expect. Underwater tests in 1956 awakened Godzilla from his nap, so he attacks Japan before disappearing until the 70s, ready to swipe at more buildings with his swole as fuck hands. Like seriously, Marvel Godzilla is built. Now that Godzilla is more properly defined as a creature that spews blue atomic energy from his mouth in pop culture, it's more charming to look back at previous Western depictions like this that gave him green skin and fire breath. And that was the perception for a while, that he was a giant green T-Rex that spit fire. And because the Hanna-Barbera series was airing around the same time and had a similar looking Godzilla, it's easy to see how the pop cultural perception would change to match that. It's not true to the source material, but I do think it's a fun look, even if he seems to change proportions in every panel. Must be one of his powers. Also, he looks weird when he's facing forward. One of my tenets for good Godzilla designs is if they look okay when facing the camera. From here, the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are called in, and eventually have to form a dedicated group to dealing with them, a group dubbed the Godzilla Squad. I wonder if this influenced later media, or if an anti-Godzilla team is just an inevitability, and Marvel happened to get to it first. That's the fun of exploring new territory like this. I see things that may have been seeds for what would blossom later. What's unique about this run compared to others in this journey is that it's tied to a larger comic book universe. So we're introduced to established characters like Nick Fury and pals rather casually. And because of the loose nature of the storytelling, it means these superhero characters aren't going to stick around to fight Godzilla every time. And Godzilla doesn't fight the characters you know right away either. No, it takes a while to get to Spider-Man. This was when Marvel was throwing new conceptual shit at the wall. So Godzilla has to fight D-listers like the Champions first, and throw away villains first introduced in this comic like Dr. Demonicus.
Freeze, black man.
Anyways, a character named Dum Dum Dugan, yes, that's his actual name, is in charge of the Godzilla Squad, so you see a lot of him here. Debuting in Nick Fury's comic, this factoid I ripped straight from Wikipedia tells me that this character has been in the Marvel canon for a very long time. I think he's the one to coin the nickname the Big G, too. This is the earliest mention of it I can find, at least. I thought the fandom came up with that one, but no. It's Dum Dum Dugan, as written by Doug Munch. Evidently, Big Baby never caught on. I don't know if that's a shame or if we should be grateful it didn't.
Well, I'll be hornswoggled by old Scratch yourself.
It's like interpreting another language.
Blasted bozo hogging the sky forced me to swerve right into that thing's big fat puss.
Okay then, I
What
didn't
the
know
what?
Godzilla was female. Not that there's anything wrong with that, I just didn't know.
That does it. I don't care whether he called me a jerk or not. Nobody steps on Gabe Jones's puss.
Oh, he means mouth.
Now, this
Puss.
it'll leave Godzilla with the horny one.
Dugan does make for an entertaining character, even if half of his screen time, would that actually be like page time, is spent belly aching at his friend Gabe because they're always just a little too late to stop Godzilla. As the comic progresses, Godzilla starts facing off against the characters you would expect from Marvel, like the Fantastic Four and the original Avengers. He also starts doing battle with some original monsters. Now that's more like it. I like seeing comic original kaiju. But there are more issues focusing on Godzilla fighting the Godzilla Squad and the super robot Red Ronin. Also, some of the goobers here aren't very creative. Lepirax is just a discount Mothra. When they make fake bullshit versions of existing characters, it just makes me wish that those characters were used instead. I mean, Mothra would be horribly out of character here if she was used, but you know what I mean. The alien monsters like the Beta Beast and the Mega Monsters are obvious exceptions. I mean, they look like that. They can't not be memorable. Honorable mention goes to the New York Rat Godzilla fights when he gets shrunk down by Ant-Man's shrinking dust. Oh yeah, Godzilla gets shrunken down and he has some tiny adventures. He not only fights a rat, but he also starts growing again, and he cements a friendship with Red Ronin's pilot, Rob, and he goes undercover, like he's put in a trench coat. I know some fans would be weird about Godzilla's size getting reduced. Based on the fan letters featured in issue 23, it seems like some were. But I don't know, I kinda like it. It's entertaining seeing this ironic situation where, for once, Godzilla is smaller than everyone else. I mentioned Red Ronin earlier, so I should probably talk about this thing more. It's a pretty big part of the comic, until it isn't. A super robot like this is actually a first for the Godzilla series. Sure, you've got Mechagodzilla and Jet Jaguar, but Ronin draws from conventions established by older tokusatsu television series like Giant Robo, also called Johnny Socko and his Flying Robot. Both Ronin and Giant Robo are controlled by a kid, though Ronin differs by requiring Rob to control the robot from within. That's the method of control anime and manga of the time we're transitioning towards. I like the robot well enough, but the character should be just as good as the robot. In fact, the robot should be a vehicle for the character. That's the balance a lot of anime and manga strive to achieve when they have the protagonist directly piloting the robot. If you want something truly compelling, then the person piloting the robot has to be interesting, you know? And unfortunately, I think Rob is rather flat as a character. He's one of those kid characters you'd see in a Gamera movie defending the monster no matter what it did. But here there's a little growth because he eventually learns that he can't just be a pacifist in every encounter. Then he goes back to begging the Godzilla Squad to stop bothering him. They really could have done more with this character. He has it better than the other original characters in this comic, who are incredibly underwritten. They're very much sidelined in favor of focusing on the escapades of the existing superheroes.
Please, Godzilla, don't hurt them. They're not really mean. They're just crazy Americans who don't understand that a monster doesn't have to be a monster.
As for Godzilla himself, his depiction in these comics harkens back to the origins of the character. A victim of atomic weapons whose destructive tendencies are the result of his rage, and something hubris of humanity. You get the gist. We see this described bluntly in the first issue. When Godzilla rips up an oil pipeline, the narration uses this moment to highlight that America's vampiric thirst will have to wait for now. And while the films would eventually turn Godzilla into this sort of anti-hero who straight up becomes a superhero, with a couple exceptions, Godzilla's rage and its colorful descriptions extend throughout the comic's run, and that is the best part of this comic. The descriptions and the narration are oozing with sensationalist writing, and I like moments like this where the narration transitions into the dialogue. It's something you'd see in a movie.
So far, there is no apparent motive for the bizarre creature's actions. We can only speculate, but as I watch its slow but deliberate, almost stately approach, I find myself wondering, just how intelligent is this beast? Wait, he's coming closer now. He's going to... Yes! He has just struck the second major American city in a week. This is no longer a mere news drama, but now a situation of life and death. Even as I speak, I'm running with the rest of the news crew to avoid being trampled.
Moments like Red Ronin nearly stepping on an oil tanker work because it feels like the pacing of the story is being deliberately halted by the narration.
This might be my last game.
Which helps with
Win or
building
lose
tension.
on this.
Doug Munch is credited as the writer of the whole series, so good job. Like, yeah, the story's a little loose, but the moment-to-moment writing is generally solid. But yeah, Godzilla's character, the narration gives his actions personality, and it seems like he only attacks when he's enraged. Sometimes it seems like he attacks at random, though. Maybe he just hates people and what they've done to him. The narration there suggests there's no method to his madness, and he just randomly decides to throw tantrums. At least that's how the issue in Las Vegas is handled. Like the roll of the die, it's random. He also helps people when they haven't done anything wrong to him, like the Inuit slaves in issue 4. It's like the writers wanted to have the raging destructive force seen in the early movies and the benevolent superheroes seen in the early 70s. An anti-hero, if you will. Strangely, Godzilla seems to tap into his inner Gamera here, and he starts to care about Rob. The aim with the character is confused early on, but by the end his motivations are spelled out a little clearer. Rob is the only thing he cares about, and he'll calm down if Rob talks to him.
Can a monster smile? Does Godzilla smile now? Perhaps.
What isn't clear is why anyone would doubt Godzilla existed when there's likely non-stop news coverage of him, and he destroys at least 3 major landmarks. The Thing clearly doesn't watch as much television as he claims. Gotta say, they interrupt the pace of the story every time, but the excessive print ads in these old Marvel issues greatly enhance the reading experience. Just seeing all this weird crap that got advertised back in the day. I'm also kind of nostalgic for these. I used to read Marvel comics from around this era because my dad collected them, and I remember seeing stuff like this. Some of these are just bizarre. At last, you can fly, Spider-Man! That's what I said when I saw you can fly in the new game. Lose 9 pounds in 2 days. I don't know, I don't really trust ghouls with giving good dieting advice. Now, the amazed, energized Spider-Man. So energized he's gone completely stiff. Other highlights include an ad for the 70s Invasion of the Body Snatchers remake, Hulk getting brainwashed into eating Hostess cupcakes, and an ad for the Fantastic Four cartoon that doesn't have Human Torch in it. Yes, that was a thing. Look it up.
Now together with Herbie the Robot, the newest member of the group, they have become the greatest team of superheroes the world has ever known.
And here are some highlights from the comic since I don't know where to put these. Marvel's version of Hercules manages to topple Godzilla by lifting his foot. In issue 4, they name-drop the severely underrated cult indie darling Star Wars.
You're trying my patience, R2. You can't wear a backpack, you haven't got a back.
Godzilla travels through space after stumbling through a wormhole. He fights a bug monster before joining a race called the Betas to fight for them in a war against their rivals named, the Megan. They use a device that lets them talk to Godzilla to tell him to defend the Earth against Planet Megan's monsters. They talk to Godzilla. Their rivals are called Megan. I can't get over this. In issue 17, we learn that Godzilla is vegetarian. I mean, alright, I can buy it. He straight up fights Bigfoot halfway through the run. Towards the end of the run, they start incorporating more famous Marvel characters like the Fantastic Four, and those make for some pretty fun issues. In the next issue, Mr. Fantastic sends Godzilla back in time, so, you know, it has that going for it. I've got a note here that says, mentioned that he teamed up with the Devil Dinosaur, who got a new series recently, so include this part to make it sound like you know what you're talking about. The most famous moments in this series come from the final 2 issues, when Godzilla fights the Avengers. It's so funny that it took 23 issues and the Human Torch interrupting their game of Monopoly for them to do anything about Godzilla. I mean, Tony Stark was bankrolling the giant robot, but he's been such a non-entity until now. By now it's obvious that this little arc was a Hail Mary because every other storyline introduced in this comic either doesn't get concluded, got terribly rushed, or outright ignored. Red Ronin doesn't even get one more shot at Godzilla, he just disappeared halfway through. I mean, in fairness, he got his head chopped off, but like, he's a robot, you can fix him. But the entire comic is so much fun that I didn't really mind how slapdash this finale was. At the very end, almost to bid him farewell from the Marvel Universe, Spider-Man shows up late to take a picture. What I want to know is, where the hell was he? Was he too busy shilling Twinkies or something? Ah well, he was probably dealing with depression. That seems like something Spider-Man would do at the time. You could argue he's not really equipped to fight Godzilla, but I don't think Dum Dum Dugan is either. And I just read a whole comic proving that.
Where's that blasted Peter Parker? Never around when you need him. Get me a camera, I'll take the pictures myself. Where are the police? Why aren't they doing anything about this giant menace? Watch it, you overgrown lizard! You're messing with J. Jonah Jameson here! Uh-oh.
Marvel's Godzilla run is zany as hell. I'm not too familiar with what Marvel was up to in the late 70s, but I'd imagine this was one of their weirder runs. It is extremely entertaining. There's just the right balance of action and story per issue, the characters and situations and dialogue are ridiculous. The monsters Godzilla fights are hit or miss, but the fights themselves are pretty neat. The art is delightfully retro and of its time. I had a blast reading these. It's a lot of the insanity from the Showa movies distilled into comic form, with a fun universe full of pre-existing goofballs. Peak Godzilla media, just cream of the crop, best of the best. Check it out. If it wasn't the movies, then I'd imagine this was how a lot of kids were introduced to the character. Toho even used the character card seen on every cover page for their Godzilla trademark icon. Weirdly, they never seem to re-up their deal with Marvel. Technically untrue since Marvel is re-releasing these comics soon. Oops. It left Godzilla's presence in the comic universe in a bad place, because Marvel's editors seemingly wanted to keep using him as a similar character appeared in his place. Yeah, it's weird. They bring him back in a short Iron Man run without ever directly naming him for copyright reasons. He even got mutated by Dr. Demonicus to look different. Yeah, didn't expect them to bring that dipshit back. They also brought back this fake Godzilla in a Thing comic book, also legally not him. They do actually call this thing Godzilla in like one panel, but it's phrased in such a way where there's still plausible deniability in court where you could say, oh, this thing isn't actually Godzilla, we're just using the Godzilla name to refer to something really big. Please don't sue us. It's a weird situation.
It's Godzilla! It
No.
looks like Godzilla, but due to international copyright laws, it's not.
It just...
Stay with the roll like it is Godzilla! Though it isn't.
I skimmed those issues, and I think you can make the case that isn't Godzilla, and he could still make a comeback if Marvel got the rights again. But if this is the fate of the character, then damn, what a pathetic way to go out. Becoming the lapdog of some D-lister like Dr. Demonicus? I would much prefer if issue 24 was his final moment. He's apparently reappeared in tiny, legally hazy cameos since then. They actually removed the scoots in a later version of this page. So it's nice that his final moments weren't him in a horribly disfigured form being mind-controlled by a racist. But still, comic books get a lot of flack for not letting characters stay dead or out of the limelight. God knows how many retcons there are to Spider-Man. So maybe it's for the best that Godzilla's story ends here. I might as well clear up some misinfo while I'm here. I was talking with my friend Humble Squid after they gave me their line recordings, and they brought up how this character, Leviathan, is commonly mistaken for Godzilla. There's misinformation going around that this is Godzilla but mutated again. In actuality, this is a brand new character. The only connection between it and Godzilla is that it was created by a character from the original Marvel run. It's clearly an homage, but that's all it is. So if you thought it was Godzilla, don't worry. His fate is not to look like a creature that had its face smashed in. One more dip into Marvel's kaiju history. It's tangentially related, I swear. In Fantastic Four issue 347, there are a couple baffling cameos. See that guy? That's Miklas from Ultra 7. Antlar can be seen on the next page too. But yeah, time to move on. There's a dark horse on the horizon. And that's a horizon I will peek over next time. I originally wanted to make this video cover everything before IDW, but I figured stopping at the end of the 70s made sense. I also wanted to put out something substantial in January, so YouTube actually paid me this month. Teehee. Next time I'll be talking about Charles Barkley, so look forward to it. Special thanks to Humble Squid and Dickard T for providing the voice acting in this video. And now a shout out to my top patrons who helped make videos like this one extra possible. Lobotomy Blues, Cool Bell Zero,
That's scary. Log too. Back to this next channel. Kitty. More kitties. Moving on. Shit. Sacrifice. Okay. Alright. Okay. Owie. Let's go. Right. I gotta go. Later. You might stream in the morning. Or later this morning. Anyway, peace out. Later. Love you. Bye. Bye.